They say Manhattan in winter shows you who you really are. Strip away the pretense, the ambition, the carefully constructed life, and what's left is just survival. That's what I learned the night I sat freezing outside Port Authority, with nothing but my nursing bag and the stubborn refusal to call my mother and admit I'd failed. What I didn't know was that across the street, a man was watching me. A man whose name made prosecutors nervous and whose family had run parts of this city for 3 generations. What happened between us would start with a coat and a car ride, but it would end with the kind of love that makes headlines and breaks rules. The thing about hypothermia is that you don't realize you're dying until you're already gone. Your body shuts down in stages. First the shivering, then the numbness, then this weird sense of peace that's actually your brain saying goodbye. I knew all this. I'm a nurse, or I was, before Midtown General decided that protecting a surgeon's reputation was more important than a dead girl's justice. That was 2 months ago. Since then, I'd learned exactly how fast your life can unravel when you challenge the wrong people. Lost my job. Lost my apartment. Watched my savings evaporate, fighting a system that was never going to let me win. And tonight, February 12th, at approximately 2 a.m., I was about to lose something else. Consciousness. The last bus to Boston had left at 11. I'd been 10 minutes late, my phone dead, my Metro card empty. So I sat. Because what else was I going to do? Call my mother and hear that disappointed silence. Sleep in a shelter where someone might steal the medical bag that contained the only proof I was ever worth something. Pride is a hell of a drug. It'll keep you upright even when your body's begging you to lie down. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone, watching snow devils twist across the empty plaza. The next, there was a man standing 3 feet away, studying me like I was a problem he was trying to solve. He was older than me, maybe 35, with the kind of face that looked carved rather than born. Dark hair, darker eyes, wearing a coat that screamed money and a suit that whispered power. Everything about him said, "Not your business, not your world." "How long have you been here?" His voice was low, accented. Italian, I thought. 2nd generation, maybe. Still carrying the music of it. "I'm fine," I managed, though my teeth were chattering so hard it sounded like fi. He didn't smile, didn't move closer. Just kept watching me with this intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "Your lips are blue. Your hands are shaking. You're showing signs of moderate hypothermia." He tilted his head slightly. "Medical training?" I blinked at him. "How did you—" He nodded at my scrubs, visible under my open coat. "At the hospital badge I'd forgotten to remove. You're a nurse, which means you know exactly how dangerous this is." He paused. "So either you have nowhere to go, or you're too proud to go there." Something about the way he said it, no judgment, just observation, made my throat tight. "Both," I whispered. He nodded once, like that answered everything. Then he did something unexpected. He turned and walked back toward a black car idling at the curb, and for a second I thought he was leaving, but instead, he opened the back door and said, over his shoulder, "Get in. We'll fight about it once you're warm." Welcome back, my loves. Before we dive in, please tap the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and share this video with a friend. Also, comment where you're watching from, and the current time it helps YouTube know you want more stories like this. All right, let's begin. I should have asked questions. Where are we going? Who are you? Why are you helping me? But the warmth of the car's heated seats was so overwhelming that all I could do was shake, violently, uncontrollably, my body trying to remember how to function. The man, I still didn't know his name, said nothing, just drove through empty streets with the confidence of someone who owned them. I caught glimpses of his face in the rearview mirror, strong jaw, Eyes that stayed on the road but somehow seemed aware of everything, including the way I was falling apart in his back seat. "There are blankets behind you," he said after a few minutes. "And water. Room temperature. Don't drink it fast." I fumbled for the blanket with numb fingers, managed to wrap it around myself. The water bottle took 3 tries to open. I sipped slowly, fighting the urge to gulp it down. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded once. That seemed to be his primary form of communication. Single, efficient nods that said more than sentences. We drove for maybe 20 minutes, though time felt strange. The shaking gradually subsided into tremors. Feeling started returning to my extremities, bringing with it the sharp pain of thawing nerve endings. I bit my lip to keep from making noise. When we finally stopped, I looked up to see we were in front of one of those buildings that doesn't need to announce itself. Sleek, modern, the kind of place where the doorman's suit probably cost more than my nursing school tuition. The doorman, gray-haired, distinguished, opened my door before I could process that we'd arrived. "Mr. Arcuri," he said warmly. "Terrible night." "Vittorio." The name confirmed what the accent had suggested. "Is my mother still awake?" "She is. Waiting for you." Vittorio's eyes flicked to me with concern but no judgment. "Miss, may I help you with your bag?" "I've got it," I managed, clutching my medical bag like a lifeline. The lobby was all marble and understated elegance. The elevator required a key card. We rode up in silence, and I tried not to catch my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked exactly like what I was, a disaster in scrubs. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse. Not a hallway with apartment doors, just into the apartment itself. Because, of course it did. "Wait here," Ivo said, gesturing to a living room that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a snow-blanketed Manhattan. Furniture that was somehow both minimal and impossibly expensive. Art on the walls that might have been real. I stood there dripping melted snow onto hardwood that probably cost more per square foot than I used to make in a week. Then I heard her voice. Musical, Italian accented, coming from somewhere deeper in the apartment. "Ivo, è così tardi." She appeared in the doorway and stopped. Mid-50s, maybe older, with elegant silver-streaked hair and the kind of bone structure that made you understand where her son got his face. She wore a silk robe and concern. "Mama," Ivo said gently. "I found her at Port Authority. Hypothermia. She's a nurse." The woman's expression shifted immediately from confusion to action. "Madonna. Kara, sit down." "No, not there closer to the fireplace." She was already moving, touching my shoulder, guiding me toward warmth. "Ivo, get the guest room ready. And soup, there's minestrone in the refrigerator." "I'm fine," I tried to say, but my voice cracked. "You are not fine. You are frozen." She had both my hands now, examining them with the practiced assessment of someone who knew bodies. "I am Lucia Arcuri. You are safe here." Something about the way she said it, not as a reassurance, but as a fact, made my throat tight. Ivo reappeared with blankets, moved with surprising efficiency to build up the fire. His mother wrapped me in layers of cashmere and wool that smelled faintly of lavender. "What is your name?" she asked softly. "Priscilla. Priscilla Levitt." "Bella. Strong name." She settled beside me, still holding one of my hands between both of hers. "And you were at the bus station because—" "I missed my bus." It sounded absurd, said out loud. "No family here? No friends?" I shook my head, tried to explain without crying. "I lost my job 2 months ago. I was trying to. I thought I could stay, fight it. But everything just—" I gestured vaguely at my scrubs, my life, the mess of it all. Lucia made a soft sound of understanding. Not pity, something deeper. Sometimes the fight costs more than we can afford to pay. Ivo returned with soup. Real soup, not from a can, smelling of herbs and vegetables and something that might have been love. He handed it to me without ceremony, then stepped back, maintaining that careful distance he'd held since the bus station. But his mother noticed. "Sit, Ivo. You make her nervous standing there like a bodyguard." "I'm fine standing. Sit." He sat, in an armchair across from us, forearms resting on his knees, watching me eat soup like it was the most important thing happening in Manhattan. "You're a nurse," Lucia said. Not a question, but I nodded anyway. "What kind?" "ER. Trauma, mostly." I hesitated. I was good at it. Past tense? The soup suddenly felt too heavy. I reported a doctor for malpractice. It didn't go well. Something flickered across Ivo's face. Too fast to read, but there. "You did the right thing," Lucia said firmly. "The cost of doing right is high, but the cost of silence is higher." She paused, then added quietly, "I know something about this." Before I could ask what she meant, she touched her chest absently. I recognized the gesture. "Cardiac patient, checking for arrhythmia." "You have a heart condition," I said without thinking. Then caught myself. "Sorry. Occupational hazard. I don't mean to—" "Atrial fibrillation," she confirmed. "Controlled, mostly. Though it acts up when I worry." She glanced meaningfully at her son. "Which is always," Ivo added dryly, "because you give me reasons." But she smiled when she said it. The kind of smile that held entire conversations, years of love and exasperation and fierce protection. I watched them, and something in my chest ached. Not pain, recognition. This was family. Real, complicated, present family. The kind I'd left behind in Massachusetts rather than admit defeat. "Your hands," Lucia said, pulling me back. "They're steadier now." "Good." She stood, all grace and purpose. "You will stay tonight. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." "I can't." "You can. You will." She said it with such finality that arguing felt impossible. "The guest room has everything you need. Ivo will show you." He rose without argument, gestured for me to follow. I grabbed my medical bag, still not quite believing any of this was real. The guest room was obscene. King bed with linens that probably cost more than my security deposit. Ensuite bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Clothes already laid out, soft pants, a cashmere sweater, things that looked expensive and comfortable in equal measure. "Those are my mother's," Ivo said from the doorway. "She's smaller than you, but they should work." "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before I could stop it. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My mother has a saying, quando vedi qualcuno cadere, non chiedi perché, li aiuti ad alzarsi." He paused. "When you see someone falling, you don't ask why. You help them stand." "That's beautiful." "She's full of them." He started to leave, then stopped, turned back. "You were right, by the way, about the malpractice. Whatever happened, whatever it cost you, you were right to report it." "How do you know?" His expression was unreadable. "Because people who do wrong things count on good people staying silent. You didn't." Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me standing in a room that felt like a dream, wearing borrowed warmth, wondering who Ivo Arcuri really was and why his certainty felt like absolution. I woke to sunlight cutting through unfamiliar curtains and the brief, terrifying confusion of not knowing where I was. Then it came back. The bus station, the stranger, the penthouse that felt like stepping into someone else's life. The clothes Lucia had left fit better than expected. The cashmere sweater was dove gray, impossibly soft. I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. Clean, warm, almost human. Voices drifted from somewhere in the apartment. I followed them, my nurse's training making me move quietly without meaning to. The kitchen was enormous, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, but somehow it still felt warm, lived in. Lucia stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like heaven. Ivo sat at the island with an espresso and a newspaper, reading glasses perched on his nose, in a way that made him look unexpectedly professorial. "Ah, Bella," Lucia spotted me first. "You look rested. Sit, sit. I'm making frittata." "I should really go," I started, but even I didn't sound convinced. "After breakfast," Lucia said firmly. "And coffee. Ivo, pour her coffee." He stood without argument, pulled down a cup from the cabinet. "Cream? Sugar? Black is fine." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. He handed me the cup, our fingers brushing for half a second. The contact felt electric, which was absurd. I was exhausted and overwhelmed and reading into things that weren't there. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I have in weeks." It was true. The bed had been like sleeping on a cloud, and for the first time in months, I'd felt safe enough to actually rest. Lucia set a plate in front of me. The frittata was perfect, dotted with herbs and cheese. I took a bite and actually made a sound I wasn't proud of. "She likes it," Lucia said, smiling at her son. "Everyone likes your cooking, Mama." "Not everyone. Your father, God rest him, thought salt was a suggestion." She said it with such warmth that it was clear the memory held no pain, only love worn smooth by time. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Lucia's hand went to her chest, the same absent gesture from last night. But this time her breathing changed. Shallow, controlled. Trying not to show it, I saw it immediately. "You're having an episode," she waved me off. "It's nothing. It passes." "Mama." Ivo was already standing, concern sharp in his voice. "Let me check," I said, already moving toward her. Not asking, just doing what I'd been trained to do. "May I?" She nodded, and I took her wrist, finding her pulse. Irregular, too fast, then skipping. Classic AFib pattern. "When did this start?" "Few minutes ago, before you came in." "Have you taken your medication today?" "Not yet." I looked at Ivo. "Where is it?" He was already moving to a cabinet, pulling out a prescription bottle. I scanned the label. Metoprolol. Correct dosage. "Water," I said, and he had it ready before I finished speaking. I guided Lucia to a chair. "Sit. Head between your knees if you feel faint." I kept my fingers on her pulse, monitoring. "Breathe with me. In through your nose, 4 counts. Hold. Out through your mouth, 6 counts." She followed my lead. Ivo stood frozen a few feet away, watching with an intensity that would have been unnerving if I'd had attention to spare. "You've done this before," Lucia said between breaths. "Cardiac ward, before I moved to ER. AFib episodes are manageable if you catch them early." I felt her pulse starting to regulate. "There. It's settling. You are good at this." "I told you I was good at my job." Past tense again, and it still hurt. Her hand covered mine. "Are good. Present tense, Kara." When I finally looked up, Ivo was staring at me like he was recalculating something fundamental. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It's nothing. Just training." "It's not nothing to me." He said it with such weight that I had to look away. After Lucia's breathing fully stabilized, and she insisted she was fine, stubborn clearly ran in the family, I helped clean up breakfast. Ivo disappeared into what I assumed was a home office. Business calls in rapid Italian, his voice dropping into tones that made it clear whoever was on the other end should be taking him very seriously. "He works too much," Lucia said, catching me listening. "Always has. Even as a boy, He thought the world would fall apart if he wasn't holding it together.
What does he do?
I realized I'd never asked. She smiled. A complicated expression. Import, export. Family business. Very boring. The way she said it made it clear there was nothing boring about it, and I shouldn't ask more questions. I should let you rest, I said, changing the subject. Maybe sit down for a bit. Only if you stop hovering like a nurse. Oh, wait, she smiled. Explore if you want. The apartment is large, easy to get lost. So I wandered. The penthouse was stunning in that understated way that spoke of real wealth, not the flashy kind. Original artwork, sculptures that looked important, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in Italian and English, and photographs, everywhere, in silver frames. Lucia as a young woman, breathtaking. A man who must have been Ivo's father, distinguished and smiling. Ivo as a boy, all serious eyes and sharp features even then. And then I saw it. A smaller frame on a side table in the hallway. A little girl, maybe 13 or 14, dark curls, bright smile, wearing a soccer uniform. She held a trophy and looked so alive, so full of possibility. My hand went to the frame automatically, picking it up, and the world stopped. I knew that face. I knew that face. Not from a photograph, from a hospital bed. From sterile sheets and beeping monitors and desperate attempts at resuscitation that failed because someone had been careless, because someone had lied. Sophia Arcuri, 14 years old. Elective cardiac ablation that should have been routine. Doctor. Castellano had been distracted, missed a complication, and when her pressure dropped, he'd waited too long to call the code. By the time we got her back, there'd been too much damage. She'd died 3 days later. I'd been the one who held her mother's hand when they turned off the machines. I'd been the one who filed the report that destroyed my career, and I'd never known her last name was Arcuri. The frame slipped from my fingers. I caught it just before it hit the floor, but the sound of my gasp brought footsteps. That's my niece. Ivo's voice came from behind me. Sophia! I couldn't turn around, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at that bright smile and feel the room tilt sideways. She died 2 years ago. Medical error during what should have been a simple procedure. His voice was carefully controlled, the way people talk when the wound is still raw. The hospital said it was unavoidable. Complications. We tried to investigate, but everything disappeared. Records, witnesses, evidence, all gone. Not all gone, I thought wildly. I had filed a report. I had testified internally. I had tried. Someone did try to report it, he continued, and I heard him step closer. A nurse. We never found out who. The hospital buried it so deep we couldn't. He trailed off. I'm sorry. This is a lot to share with a stranger. I wasn't a stranger. I was the nurse. I was the person he'd been looking for, and I was standing in his home, wearing his mother's clothes, having just helped Lucia through an AFib episode, and I couldn't tell him, because what would happen when he learned the truth? That I'd failed to save Sophia? That my report hadn't been enough? I'm sorry, I managed, my voice barely working. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. He was quiet for a moment. She would have been 17 this year, about to graduate high school. She wanted to be a doctor. The irony was so cruel I wanted to scream. I couldn't finish the sentence. Bathroom. I fled before he could respond, found the guest bathroom, locked the door, and sank down against it. My hands were shaking again, but not from cold this time. Sophia Arcuri had died because of Dr. Castellano's negligence. I had tried to get justice for her, and now I was in her uncle's home, accepting his family's help, while they had no idea who I really was. The universe had a vicious sense of humor. Through the door, I heard Lucia's voice, concerned. Ivo responding quieter. I pressed my hands over my mouth to keep from making sound. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I stayed in that bathroom longer than was reasonable, staring at myself in the mirror like my reflection might offer answers. It didn't. Just showed me a woman wearing borrowed clothes in a stranger's home, carrying a secret that felt like it might crack her ribs. Tell him. Don't tell him. The arguments circled each other like boxers looking for an opening. If I told him I was the nurse who reported Sophia's death, maybe he'd be grateful. Maybe he'd finally have answers about what really happened that day. Maybe it would bring some kind of closure. Or maybe he'd blame me for not doing enough, for failing to save her, for filing a report that accomplished nothing except getting me fired while Dr. Castellano walked away untouched. Maybe he'd see me as just another person who let his family down. And underneath all of it, the darker thought. Ivo Arcuri was clearly someone with power. Real power. The kind that made doormen stand straighter, and had a penthouse that required a keycard to access. If he decided I was responsible for Sophia's death, even partially, what would he do? A knock at the door made me jump. Priscilla? Lucia's voice, soft with concern. Are you unwell? I opened the door. She stood there with a cup of tea I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. Come, she said, gesturing toward the living room. Sit with me. We settled on the couch by the windows. Manhattan stretched out below us, all glass and steel and millions of people living lives that didn't include impossible moral dilemmas. You saw Sophia's photograph, Lucia said. Not a question. Yes. It upset you. I took a sip of tea to buy time. It's always hard, hearing about children dying. You are a terrible liar, Kara. She said it gently, without judgment. Which tells me you are not used to lying. A good quality, usually, though sometimes a difficult one. I looked at her. Really looked. She had kind eyes, but they'd seen things. Survived things. This wasn't a woman who would fall apart at hard truths. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Why did Ivo bring me here? Really? He doesn't know me. I could be anyone. Lucia smiled slightly. My son has good instincts about people. Always has. He saw you needed help, and he helped. It's that simple. Nothing is that simple. No, she agreed. But some things are that clear. She set down her own cup. He blames himself, you know, for Sophia. He thinks if he'd pushed harder, investigated deeper, been more him, he could have gotten justice for her, for his sister. The guilt in her voice was its own kind of pain. It wasn't his fault. I know. But knowing and believing are different countries. She paused. Whatever you're carrying, Priscilla, whatever burden brought that look to your face when you saw her picture, you should tell him. Secrets in this family have a way of becoming weapons. Before I could respond, Ivo appeared in the doorway. His expression was tight, controlled anger barely leashed. I need to go out, he said to his mother. Then to me. You should stay here today. Inside. What happened? Lucia asked, already standing. Nothing that concerns, he caught himself, softened his tone. Business complications. I'll handle it. Ivo. His mother's voice carried a warning. What kind of complications? He was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing what to share. Finally, someone's been making moves. Quiet ones. Testing boundaries, seeing what they can take while I'm... He glanced at me, seemed to recalibrate. While I'm distracted. Then don't be distracted, Lucia said firmly. Handle it. I am. But the tension in his shoulders suggested it wasn't that simple. He left without another word, and the apartment suddenly felt colder despite the warmth. He keeps too much inside, Lucia said, staring at the elevator doors. Always has. Even as a boy, he thought showing emotion was weakness. She turned to me. Stay today, please. I would feel better knowing you're safe. Safe from what? Her smile was sad. From whatever my son is trying to protect us from. The day stretched long and strange. Lucia taught me to make fresh pasta, her hands moving with practiced grace while she told stories about Ivo as a child. How he'd been serious even then, taking care of his younger sister, like he was born to protect people. How Sophia had been the light in their family, the one who could make Ivo laugh when nothing else could. I listened and said nothing about knowing Sophia, about being there when she died, about the report that went nowhere. The guilt sat in my chest like a stone. Around 3, Lucia excused herself for a nap. Her energy had been flagging for the past hour, and I'd noticed the way she kept touching her chest. The AFib was still bothering her, stress making it worse. I found myself wandering again, restless. The library called to me. Books always did. I was scanning the shelves, mostly Italian literature, some English classics, when a folder slipped from between 2 volumes and hit the floor. I shouldn't have looked. I absolutely should not have looked, but I did. Inside were newspaper clippings, all about Sophia's death. Family seeks answers after teen's surgery death. Midtown general faces questions over procedure. Hospital clears doctor in patient death. And underneath, handwritten notes in Italian and English, names, dates, question marks, next to hospital administrators. Next to Dr. Castellano's name, underlined 3 times. Lied, covered up, how to prove. And at the bottom of the page, in different ink, more recent, nurse who reported who. Hospital won't say. Find her. My hands shook holding the page. He'd been looking for me. For 2 years, he'd been trying to find the person who filed that report. And I'd literally fallen into his lap at a bus station. Find something interesting? I spun around. Ivo stood in the doorway, still wearing his coat, snow dusting his shoulders. I hadn't heard the elevator. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I tried to shove the folder back, but he'd already seen what I was holding. His expression shifted, closed off. That's private. I know. It fell, and I couldn't finish, couldn't lie anymore. He crossed the room, took the folder from my hands with careful control. You shouldn't look through other people's things. You're right. I'm sorry. My voice was shaking. Ivo, I need to tell you something. Not now. He wouldn't look at me. I've had a long day. It's about Sophia. That stopped him. He turned slowly, and the look on his face made my stomach drop. What about her? This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and knowing was inevitable since I saw that photograph. The nurse who filed the report, I said, forcing the words out. The one you've been looking for. The one who tried to get justice for her. What about her? His voice had gone very quiet. I met his eyes. It was me. I'm the nurse who reported Dr. Castellano. I was there the day Sophia died. I tried to save her, and when I couldn't, I tried to make sure her death meant something, that someone would be held accountable. The silence stretched so long I thought I might shatter from it. You, he finally said. Not a question. A statement of fact he was trying to process. I didn't know she was your niece. I didn't know your family. I just knew a 14-year-old girl died because of negligence, and no one seemed to care. The words tumbled out faster now. I filed the report. I testified internally. I gave them everything. And they buried it, fired me, blacklisted me. I lost everything trying to get justice for her. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ivo stared at me like I'd become someone else entirely. Maybe I had. You need to leave, he said. The words hit like a physical blow. Ivo. Now. Please. He wouldn't look at me. I need I need time to think. Behind him, Lucia appeared in the doorway, drawn by our voices. She looked between us, understanding blooming on her face. Ivo, she started, but he held up a hand. Mama, not now. My son does not need perfection, she said anyway, moving into the room with surprising strength. He needs honesty, and this girl has given you both. She lied. She survived, Lucia corrected. There's a difference. She looked at me, and her expression was so compassionate I wanted to cry. Go to the guest room, Kara. Give him time, but don't leave. Not yet. I fled before either of them could say more, my heart hammering, everything feeling like it was falling apart again. But as I closed the door, I heard Lucia's voice, firm and clear. The girl you've been searching for just walked into our lives. You can be angry, Ivo, but don't be stupid enough to let her walk back out. I spent 2 hours in that guest room, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to muffled voices through the door. Italian, mostly. Lucia's firm and insistent. Ivo's low and controlled in that way that suggested he was anything but. Eventually, the voices stopped. Footsteps approached. A knock. Come, Lucia said through the door. Not a request. I found them in the living room. Ivo stood by the windows, his back to me, hands in his pockets, rigid. Lucia sat on the couch, her expression carved from something stronger than marble. Sit, Kara, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat. Ivo didn't turn around. Tell him, Lucia said simply. Everything. From the beginning. My throat felt like sandpaper. I don't think... Tell him. Her voice allowed no argument. So I did. It was a Tuesday, I started, and my voice sounded strange, even to myself. Detached, clinical, the only way I could get through it. Sophia came in for an elective cardiac ablation. Routine procedure. She was nervous but excited because it meant she could play soccer again without restrictions. She told me about her team, about a tournament she wanted to compete in. Ivo's shoulders tensed, but he still didn't turn. Dr. Castellano was the attending surgeon. He'd done hundreds of these procedures. But that day, he was distracted, kept checking his phone. One of the nurses mentioned he was going through a divorce. I don't know if that mattered, but I swallowed hard. During the procedure, Sophia's pressure dropped. It wasn't unusual these things happen, but it required immediate attention. He didn't respond fast enough. By the time he called the code, by the time we got her stabilized, there'd been oxygen deprivation, brain damage. The words felt like stones I was pulling from my chest. She held on for 3 days. Your sister, Sophia's mother, she never left her side. I was there when they made the decision to turn off the machines. I held her hand while she signed the papers. My voice cracked. I told her I was sorry. She said, "You tried. That's more than most people did." Lucia made a soft sound. Not quite a sob, but close. After Sophia died, I couldn't sleep. Kept seeing her face. Kept thinking about how preventable it was. So I filed a report with the hospital ethics board. Detailed everything. The distraction, the delayed response, the way Dr. Castellano had tried to alter the surgical notes afterward. He altered the notes? Ivo's voice came quiet, still not turning. Yes, I'd made copies of the originals, kept them as evidence. I pulled in a breath. The hospital launched an internal investigation. I testified, gave them everything. I thought. I laughed, bitter. I actually thought the truth mattered. What happened? Lucia asked, though something in her tone suggested she already knew. Dr. Castellano was a major donor. His family had endowed an entire wing. So the hospital decided the truth was too expensive. I felt the old anger rising, sharp and clean. They cleared him of wrongdoing. called Sophia's death an unavoidable complication, sealed all the records, and when I wouldn't stay quiet, when I kept pushing, they fired me for creating a hostile work environment. They blamed you, Ivo said, still facing the window. They destroyed me, I corrected. Blacklisted me from every hospital in the city. Made sure no one would hire me. Froze my nursing license pending review. I lost my apartment, my savings, everything. All for trying to make sure a 14-year-old girl's death wasn't just forgotten. The silence that followed felt alive, dangerous. Finally, Ivo turned. His face was perfectly calm, too calm. The kind of calm that made me understand why people were afraid of him. "You should have told me," he said, each word precise. "The moment you saw her picture. I know. You sat at my mother's table. You ate our food. You helped her with her condition. All while knowing..." He stopped, jaw working. "I was afraid," I said simply. "Afraid you'd blame me for not saving her. Afraid you'd think I didn't do enough. Afraid that..." I forced myself to hold his gaze. "Afraid of exactly this. That you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now. And how am I looking at you? Like I'm the reason she's dead." Something flickered across his face. "That's not... isn't it?" I stood. Couldn't sit anymore. "I was her nurse, Ivo. I was in that room. I saw what was happening, and I couldn't stop it. I tried afterward to get justice, and I failed at that too. So yes, I should have told you immediately. But I was terrified that you'd see what I see every time I close my eyes, that I wasn't enough. Priscilla, I'll leave." I cut him off. "I'll pack and go. I'm sorry I lied by omission. I'm sorry I wasn't enough to save her. I'm sorry for all of it." I was halfway to the guest room when Lucia spoke. "She is the only person who tried to save our child." Her voice carried across the apartment, clear and absolute. "The only one. The hospital didn't. The board didn't. The other doctors and nurses who saw what happened and said nothing they didn't. She stood, and even diminished by grief, she was formidable. And we failed her, too." I stopped, turned back. "We had money, power, connections," Lucia continued, looking at her son. "We should have found her, protected her, made sure she didn't lose everything for doing the right thing for our Sophia." Her voice broke on the name. Instead, she froze at a bus station while we had everything. Ivo's expression was unreadable. "Mama?" "No." She crossed to me, took my face in her hands with surprising gentleness. "You lost your career, your home, your future, because you tried to give my granddaughter justice, because you wouldn't be silent when silence would have been easier." She kissed my forehead. "You are the bravest person in this room." "I'm really not," I whispered. "You are. And my son." She turned to face Ivo. "My son is angry because he blames himself, because he thinks if he'd been smarter, faster, more thorough in his investigation, he would have found you, protected you, and he's right. He failed you." "Lucia," I started. "We both did," she continued. "So you can be angry at her silence, Ivo. But remember, she stayed silent because she was afraid. And she was afraid because of what this world does to people who tell the truth." Ivo stood frozen, something working behind his eyes. Calculation. Reassessment. The same look he'd had that first night when he decided to help me. Finally, he spoke. "I need time." He grabbed his coat from the chair. "I need to think." "Ivo," his mother started. "I'm not asking her to leave," he said, not looking at either of us. "But I need to not be here right now." He was gone before either of us could respond, the elevator doors closing on his retreating form. I stood in the suddenly too quiet apartment, feeling like I'd just survived something and lost something in equal measure. "He'll come back," Lucia said softly. "Will he?" She smiled, sad and knowing. He's my son. I know his anger. This isn't rage, Kara. This is grief. He's grieving what he couldn't prevent, what he couldn't fix. She squeezed my hand. Give him time to grieve. Then, he'll see clearly. See what? That sometimes the universe doesn't bring people together by accident. She touched my cheek. Sometimes it brings them together because they're the only ones who understand each other's scars. I wanted to believe her, but all I could see was Ivo's face, that terrible calm, and the certainty that I'd just ruined the only safe place I'd found in months. Outside the windows, snow began to fall again on Manhattan. Inside, I waited for a man who might never forgive me for being human. 3 days passed like held breath. Ivo came and went like a ghost early mornings, late nights, always when I was asleep or pretending to be. Lucia assured me he wasn't avoiding me, exactly. He was handling things. Which apparently meant making phone calls in Italian that sounded increasingly hostile, and spending hours in his office with men in expensive suits, who looked at me like I was a problem they were calculating how to solve. I should have left. Every instinct screamed to pack my bag and disappear before I became more of a burden than I already was. But Lucia wouldn't hear it. And honestly, I had nowhere to go. My pride had teeth, but even pride eventually gets hungry. So I stayed. Helped Lucia with cooking, monitored her heart rate, tried to make myself useful while feeling completely useless. At night, I researched nursing positions in other cities, other states, places where Midtown General's blacklist might not reach. Boston, maybe, or Portland, somewhere cold where I could disappear into the weather. On the 4th morning, Lucia announced I needed fresh air before I started looking like a vampire. I'm fine inside, I protested. You are turning transparent. Come, we shop for dinner. She was already putting on her coat, the discussion clearly over. Should we tell Ivo? Something flickered across her face. He knows everything that happens in this building. He'll know. We took a car service to a small Italian market in the village, the kind of place where everyone knew Lucia by name and treated her like visiting royalty. She moved through the narrow aisles collecting tomatoes, fresh basil, bread that smelled like childhood memories I'd never had. I was examining wine labels, trying to look useful, when I felt it. That prickle at the back of your neck. The one that says, someone's watching. I turned slowly, scanning the market. Customers, vendors, normal people doing normal things. But the feeling persisted, sharp as a scalpel. Kara, this one. Lucia held up a bottle of olive oil. Perfect, I said absently, still scanning. Outside, 2 men in a black sedan parked across the street, not looking at the market, but not looking away either. My nursing instincts kicked in, the same ones that could spot a patient decompensating before the monitors caught it. Pattern recognition? Threat assessment? Lucia, I said quietly, we should go. She looked up, caught something in my expression, didn't question, just nodded. Antonio, she called to the owner, I'll come back tomorrow. Hold these for me? We headed for the door. I kept myself between Lucia and the street, hyper-aware of every person, every movement. The sedan's doors opened. Walk faster, I said. Don't run, just faster. Our car was half a block away. We were 10 feet from it when they moved. 2 men, professionals, closing distance with practiced efficiency. One reached for Lucia. I stepped into his path. Did something I'd learned in nursing school, self-defense. Drove my palm upward into his nose. Not hard enough to break it, but enough to make his eyes water. He stumbled back, surprised more than hurt. Get in the car! I shoved Lucia toward the door. The second man grabbed my arm, fingers digging in with bruising force. I twisted, using his momentum against him, another nursing trick. Learned from restraining combative patients, but he was stronger, faster. "The boss wants to talk," he said, accent thick. "Russian, maybe. Come quiet. Nobody gets hurt." "Which boss?" I gasped, still fighting. "Not yours." He dragged me toward the sedan. I dug in my heels, grabbed for anything my bag, still on my shoulder. Inside, pens, a small flashlight, hand sanitizer. Not weapons, unless you knew anatomy. I pulled out a pen, flipped it in my grip. When he yanked me forward, I drove it hard into the pressure point where his neck met his shoulder, the supraclavicular fossa. Not deep enough to cause real damage, but deep enough to hit the nerve cluster. He roared, grip loosening for just a second. I drove my knee into his solar plexus, watched him fold, gasping. The vagus nerve does beautiful work when you know where to hit its sudden panic response, breathing difficulties, momentary paralysis. "Priscilla!" Lucia screamed from inside the car. The first man recovered, coming at me again. I fumbled for the hand sanitizer, squeezed a stream directly into his eyes. He cursed, clawing at his face. I ran, made it 3 steps before someone else grabbed me from behind. Bigger, better trained. An arm around my throat, cutting off air. Black spots danced. I reached back, found his face, drove my thumbs toward his eyes, not to blind, but to trigger the blink reflex, make him loosen. The pressure released suddenly. I fell forward, gasping. Ivo stood where my attacker had been, his hand wrapped around the man's throat, slamming him against the sedan with controlled violence. "Who sent you?" His voice was ice. The man sputtered something in Russian. Ivo responded in the same language, and whatever he said made the man's face go pale. More cars arrived. Men in dark suits, moving with military precision. The 2 attackers were hauled away. Someone checked on Lucia. Someone else tried to check on me, but I waved them off, still trying to catch my breath. Ivo turned to me. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were different than they'd been 3 days ago. "You fought," he said quietly. "I survived," I corrected, rubbing my throat. "There's a difference. You protected my mother. I protected us both." My hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash incoming. Who were they? Rivals. Idiots who think. He stopped, jaw working. They heard I was protecting a nurse. They thought that made you a weakness. Am I? He studied me for a long moment. The way I stood, still ready to fight despite shaking hands. The pen still clutched in my fist. The determined set of my shoulders that said, "I will not go down easy." "No," he said finally. "You're not." Something shifted in the space between us. Not forgiveness that would take longer, but recognition. Understanding. "You used medical knowledge," he continued, almost bemused, "to fight. Pressure points, nerve clusters, panic physiology. I tried for casual, failed. You learn anatomy to heal. But anatomy is anatomy. It works both ways." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "My mother was right about you." "About what?" "That you're not someone to save." He stepped closer, and for the first time in days, really looked at me. "You're someone to stand beside." Before I could respond, Lucia emerged from the car, furious and magnificent. "Idiots!" she shouted at the departing sedans. "Attacking an old woman, cowards!" Then to Ivo, "She saved my life. With a pen and hand sanitizer, I want her at every family function." Despite everything, the fear, the adrenaline, the men who'd just tried to kidnap me, I laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. Ivo watched me laugh, something complicated crossing his face. "Come," he said finally. "We need to talk. Properly this time. About? About what happens when the city learns you're not a weakness." His expression turned serious. and that makes you a target. The second attempt came 2 days later. They were smarter this time. Waited until I was alone, Lucia, at a doctor's appointment. Ivo at a meeting he couldn't postpone. The doorman, Vittorio, had stepped away for exactly 3 minutes. Professional timing. Professional execution. I never saw their faces. Just the cloth over my mouth. The chemical smell and then nothing. I woke to cold. The bone-deep kind that seeps in through concrete and rusted metal. My head pounded, vision blurry, zip ties cutting into my wrists behind a chair that smelled like oil and decay. A warehouse. Had to be. The acoustics were wrong for anything else, every sound echoing too large, too empty. Water lapped somewhere nearby. The docks, then. She's awake. A man's voice, accent I couldn't place. Footsteps approached. Someone grabbed my chin, forced my head up. I blinked until his face came into focus. Older, scarred, eyes flat as a shark's. "You know why you're here?" he asked. "Terrible Yelp review?" The words came out hoarse, but steady. Spite is its own kind of strength. He backhanded me. Not hard enough to do real damage, these men were professionals. Knew how to hurt without breaking, but enough to make my ears ring. "Ivo Arcuri's pet nurse," he said. "You cost me a very lucrative arrangement, so now you're going to help me get it back. I'm a nurse, not a negotiator. Your leverage," he circled behind me. "He'll trade anything for you. Territory, business, maybe even his life, if we ask nicely. You don't know him very well. I know men like him. They all have the same weakness, thinking they can protect everything they care about." He leaned close. Spoiler, they can't. My training kicked in despite the fear. Assessment, patient me. Injuries, minor contusions, possible mild concussion, restricted circulation to hands. Environment, cold, damp, multiple hostiles. Prognosis extremely poor without intervention. Time to make my own intervention. "He won't trade," I said. "Not for me. We'll see." They left me there. Hours, maybe. Hard to tell with no windows, no phone. Just cold and dark, and the sound of water against pilings. I worked the zip ties. Plastic, tight, cutting into skin. But I'd restrained enough combative patience to know constant pressure in one direction eventually creates weak points. I twisted, pulled, ignored the pain as plastic bit deeper. Blood helped, made things slippery. My right hand came free first, then the left. I stayed in position, hands behind my back, listening to footsteps patrol outside the room. 2 men, rotating every 20 minutes. I needed a weapon. The chair was bolted down, useless. My pockets were empty, they'd taken everything. Except my scrub top had a metal snap at the collar. Small, but metal. I worked it loose with numb fingers, palmed it. Not much, but nurses learn to work with what they have. The door opened. One guard, coming to check. I kept my position, slumped, defeated. He got close enough to grab my shoulder. I drove the snap into his inner thigh, not the femoral artery. I wasn't trying to kill him, but close enough to make him think I might. He jerked back, and I used the momentum to drive my elbow into his solar plexus. He went down gasping. I grabbed his radio, ran. The warehouse was a maze of containers and shadows. I ducked behind a stack of crates, pressed the radio button. Ivo. I didn't know if he could hear me, if the frequency was right. Dockside warehouse, Red Hook, I think. 4 men, maybe more. Hands grabbed me from behind. The radio clattered away. "Stupid," the scarred man hissed, dragging me back. "Stupid girl." He threw me against a container. My head cracked against metal, vision swimming. Then, gunfire. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Men in dark suits poured through the entrance, weapons drawn. Ivo's men, moving with military precision. The scarred man reached for his gun. Ivo appeared like something out of a nightmare, moving through the chaos with terrible purpose. He put 2 bullets in the scarred man's shoulder before the man could even aim. "Where is she?" Ivo's voice carried over the gunfire. I tried to call out, but my voice wouldn't work. Another guard spotted me, raised his weapon. I grabbed a piece of rebar from the floor, swung hard, caught him across the knees. He went down, and I ran toward Ivo's voice, toward safety, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. We met in the center of the warehouse. He caught me before I fell, arms coming around me like iron. "You called," he said into my hair. "On the radio. How? Freed myself. Stole it." I was shaking. Couldn't stop. "They wanted to use me against you." "I know." His hands checked me for injuries, efficient and thorough. "Are you hurt?" "Mostly my pride." A weak laugh. "And my wrists." He looked at the raw, bloody circles where the zip ties had been. Something dangerous flashed across his face. "The one who did this?" His voice was very quiet. "Shoulder wound. Near the entrance." I grabbed his jacket. "Don't kill him. Please. I don't want that on my conscience." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. His men were already securing the warehouse, zip-tying the survivors. The scarred man sat against a container, clutching his bleeding shoulder, face pale. Ivo walked over to him. I couldn't hear what he said, but the man's expression went from pain to terror in seconds. "Let's go," Ivo said, returning to me. He wrapped his coat around my shoulders, started leading me toward the exit. "Wait." I stopped. "The one I hit with the rebar. Check his knees." "I might have—" "Priscilla." Ivo turned me to face him. "You don't have to care about them. I'm a nurse. I have to care about everyone." I met his eyes. "It's not optional." Something shifted in his expression. Not softening exactly, but understanding. He nodded to one of his men. "Check the one with the knee injury. Get him medical attention." Outside, snow had started falling again. Manhattan glittered in the distance, oblivious to the violence in its shadows. A car waited. Ivo helped me in, slid in beside me. The moment the door closed, the adrenaline crashed and I started shaking properly. Violent, uncontrollable tremors. "You freed yourself," Ivo said quietly. "Before I got there. I had to. Couldn't just wait." My teeth chattered. "They wanted to use me to control you. They failed." He pulled me against him, and I went too cold and exhausted to maintain any distance. "Because you refused to be leverage. I refused to be helpless," I corrected. "There's a difference." His arms tightened. "When I heard your voice on that radio, when I realized you'd fought your way to it, you were terrified?" I tried for humor. "I was awed." He pulled back enough to look at me. "You are the strongest person I've ever met." "I'm really not." "You are." His hand came up, cupped my face with surprising gentleness. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. The car pulled up to the penthouse. Lucia met us at the elevator, took one look at my wrists, and started crying and cursing in Italian simultaneously. But later, after the wounds were cleaned and I was wrapped in blankets on the couch, Ivo sat beside me and said, "No more running. No more hiding. Tomorrow, we end this." "End what?" His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Everything that made you afraid." The New York State Medical Board hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Thursday in March. Room 402 of a municipal building in Lower Manhattan, the kind of place where justice moved at the speed of bureaucracy and usually died of boredom before reaching a verdict. Not today. I sat in the back row, Ivo beside me, watching the room fill with people who shouldn't have been there. Reporters, former patients, hospital administrators who looked increasingly nervous, and lawyers, so many lawyers the air felt thick with billable hours. "How did you do this?" I whispered to Ivo. "Medical board hearings aren't public. They are when enough people file formal complaints simultaneously." His expression was calm, but his eyes held something predatory. "And when those complaints come with evidence that suggests systemic fraud, the board has no choice but to open the proceedings." "How much evidence?" "All of it." Dr. Marcus Castellano arrived at 8:55, confident in his expensive suit and practiced smile. He saw the crowd and faltered for just a second before recovering. Years of surgery had taught him to control his hands under pressure. But hands weren't the problem today. Today, the truth was. The board chair, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything, called the hearing to order. "We are here to review multiple complaints against Dr. Marcus Castellano regarding professional misconduct, negligence, and potential fraud." She looked directly at him. "Dr. Castellano, you have the right to legal representation." "I'm aware." His lawyer, a man whose retainer probably cost more than my annual nursing salary used to, stood smoothly. "My client denies all allegations and looks forward to clearing his name." "Then let's begin." What followed was systematic dismantling. The kind where you watch someone's life collapse in real time and can't decide if it's justice or cruelty. Maybe both. The first witness was a woman named Patricia Chen, 62, who'd lost her husband after a routine procedure 2 years before Sophia. She spoke calmly, presenting altered surgical notes next to originals she'd somehow obtained notes that showed Dr. Castellano had documented a complication as unavoidable, when the originals showed clear negligence. "How did you get these?" the board chair asked. "An anonymous source sent them to my lawyer 6 weeks ago." Patricia's gaze found Ivo briefly, then moved on. Someone who apparently believed the truth mattered more than institutional protection. The second witness was a former surgical nurse who'd resigned from Midtown General rather than stay silent. She testified about 3 other cases where Dr. Castellano's distraction or negligence had led to complications, and how each time the hospital had quietly settled with NDAs attached. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" one board member asked. "Because I watched what happened to Nurse Levitt when she tried." She looked directly at me. I was a coward. She wasn't. My throat tightened. The third witness was a forensic accountant who presented evidence that Dr. Castellano had been billing for procedures he'd delegated to residents while claiming he'd performed them himself. Medicare fraud, insurance fraud, the kind of thing that made federal prosecutors salivate. Dr. Castellano's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the evidence was airtight, documented, undeniable. Then came the medical records. Sophia's case, presented by a physician from Columbia who'd reviewed them independently. He walked through the timeline, the delayed response, the altered notes, his voice clinical and damning. In my professional opinion, this was not an unavoidable complication. This was negligence that directly resulted in patient death, followed by deliberate falsification of medical records. Dr. Castellano finally broke. "This is a witch hunt. These records are fabricated. They're yours." The board chair held up a page, authenticated by 3 independent experts. Your handwriting, your medical license number, your signature. "I want immunity," he said suddenly. "I want immunity, and I'll tell you everything. How the hospital operates, how they protect donors, how they—" "Dr. Castellano," his lawyer hissed. "Do not—" But it was too late. He'd started talking, and once the dam broke, everything poured out. Names, dates, cases swept under expensive rugs. He tried to save himself by offering up everyone else, not realizing he was just digging deeper. I watched it happen with strange detachment. This man had killed Sophia. He destroyed my career. And now he was destroying himself. In public, with cameras recording every word. The board chair finally called for a recess. This hearing will reconvene in 1 hour. Dr. Castellano, I strongly suggest you stop talking to anyone except your attorney. The room erupted. Reporters surged forward. Hospital administrators fled. Dr. Castellano sat frozen, finally understanding what Ivo had done. Not murder. Complete and total ruin. We stepped into the hallway. Lucia waited there. She'd refused to come inside. Said she couldn't watch without becoming violent, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "They cleared you," she whispered. "Finally. The hearing's not over." "It doesn't matter. Everyone heard. Everyone knows." She pulled back, hands on my face. "You were right. You tried. And now the whole city knows it." Ivo stood apart, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "You did this," I said, walking over to him. "All of it. The evidence, the witnesses, I made phone calls, asked questions. The truth was always there, Priscilla. The hospital just spent a lot of money hiding it." His voice was soft. "You were the only one brave enough to say it out loud when it mattered. He's going to lose everything. Yes, his medical license, his reputation, probably his freedom. Yes, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Is this what justice looks like?" "Sometimes." He stepped closer. "Is it enough?" I thought about Sophia, about her smile in that photograph, about holding her mother's hand while machines beeped their final rhythms, about 2 years of wondering if I'd done enough, been enough, mattered enough. "It's a start," I said finally. The hearing reconvened. The board deliberated for less than 30 minutes before returning with their decision. Immediate suspension of Dr. Castellano's medical license, pending criminal investigation. Referral to the district attorney for fraud charges. And a formal apology to me, on record, for the hospital's retaliation. Patricia Chen found me afterward, outside in the cold March air. "Thank you," she said simply. "For trying, even when it cost you everything. I'm sorry it wasn't enough to save your husband. You tried when no one else would. That's more than enough." She squeezed my hand. "What will you do now?" I looked at Ivo, standing a few feet away, giving us space but staying close. At Lucia, fierce and proud. At the city stretching out around us, brutal and beautiful, and full of second chances for people brave enough to take them. "I'm going to build something better," I said. The clinic opened on the first day of spring. Though Manhattan hadn't gotten the memo, snow still clung to corners and alleys like it had unfinished business. It wasn't much to look at from the outside. A renovated building in the Lower East Side, sandwiched between a bodega and a laundromat. No gleaming glass, no corporate sponsors with names carved in marble. Just a simple sign. Asterisk, asterisk, Levitt Community Health Center. Asterisk, asterisk. Inside was different. State-of-the-art equipment. Exam rooms that smelled like fresh paint instead of despair. A waiting area with actual comfortable chairs and magazines less than 2 years old. An office for me that still felt surreal every time I walked into it. "Dr. Levitt, Maria, my new nurse practitioner," called from the hallway. "Your 9 o'clock is here." "It's just Priscilla," I said for the 20th time that week. "And I'm not a doctor." "You run a clinic. Close enough." She grinned. "Also, there's a reporter outside asking for a quote about the nurse who took down Manhattan's medical establishment." I groaned. "Tell them I have patience." Already did. They said they'd wait. The press had been relentless since the hearing. Every outlet wanted the story. The nurse who'd lost everything for doing right. The Mafia boss who'd helped her rebuild. The love story that shook the city. They made it sound like a fairy tale. All drama and romance and neat narrative arcs. They missed the quiet parts, the hard parts, the 3 a.m. conversations about whether I was ready to trust again. The way Ivo still woke up, sometimes reaching for a gun that wasn't there, because his mind was still in that warehouse. The fact that Lucia had to remind both of us to eat because we got so focused on building the clinic, we forgot basic human maintenance. Real love wasn't the dramatic moments. It was the unglamorous grind of healing while building something new. My first patient was Mrs. Rodriguez, 68, diabetic. Couldn't afford her medications after her insurance lapsed. She cried when I told her we'd provide them for free. "How?" she asked. "How can you afford this?" "Community support," I said, which was technically true. Ivo had funded the initial setup, but he'd structured it so the clinic was mine, independent, sustainable, with funding from multiple sources so it couldn't be controlled or shut down by any single entity, including him. "You know what they say," Mrs. Rodriguez said as I checked her blood sugar, "about you and Mr. Arcuri. I'm sure they say lots of things. They say he would burn the whole city down for you." She patted my hand. "And you made him better, more human." He was always human. People just didn't see it. But I understood what she meant. Ivo had changed, or maybe just allowed himself to be seen differently. He still did whatever it was he did: import, export, family business. But now he also showed up at community meetings, funded other small clinics, used his influence for things besides fear. People whispered about it. The Mafia king brought to his knees by love, tamed by a nurse, reformed by compassion. They were wrong. He hadn't been tamed or reformed. He'd just found a different kind of purpose. We both had. 6 months after opening, the clinic was thriving. We'd seen over 3,000 patients, hired 4 more nurses and 2 part-time doctors, started a program for uninsured children, built partnerships with other community organizations. I worked 70-hour weeks and loved every exhausting minute. But tonight, I was late. A patient had coded minor heart arrhythmia, caught it early. She'd be fine, and by the time I finished the paperwork, it was past 11. I locked up, stepped outside into cold that felt personal. April had become October, and somehow we were back to winter. The city's yearly reminder that it could be beautiful and cruel simultaneously. My coat was too thin. Again. Different coat, same problem. Some patterns persisted. You still don't dress for the weather. I turned. Ivo leaned against a black car, the same one from that first night, watching me with familiar intensity. "What are you doing here?" But I was smiling. "Making sure you get home safely." He straightened, pulled off his coat, "and apparently making sure you don't freeze." "I'm fine." He draped it over my shoulders anyway, same as he'd done almost a year ago. The weight of it felt like coming home. "Déjà vu," I said softly. "Full circle." He moved closer, and even after months together, my heart still kicked up at his proximity. "Though you're significantly less hypothermic this time." "Progress." I pulled his coat tighter. "You didn't have to come. I would have taken the subway." "I wanted to." He was quiet for a moment, looking at the clinic. "You built something remarkable, Priscilla." "We built it." "No. I provided resources. You provided vision. There's a difference." Snow started falling. Soft, gentle. The kind that made Manhattan look almost innocent. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Ivo asked. "In the car?" I said a lot of things, most of them while shivering uncontrollably. "You said thank you." His hand found mine. "And I said nothing, because I didn't know how to tell you that you'd already saved me just by letting me help." "Ivo, let me finish." He turned me to face him fully. That night, I was empty, going through motions, holding everything together because that's what I did, but not feeling any of it. Then I saw you on that bench, freezing but refusing to give up, and something— He paused, searching for words. Something woke up. Snow caught in his hair, made him look younger somehow, vulnerable in a way he never allowed in public. The night I found you, he continued, was the night I found myself. My throat tightened. That's a very romantic thing to say. It's true. I reached up, touched his face. No, we found each other. He smiled then, real and unguarded. Semantics. Important semantics. I kissed him, soft and sure, tasting snow and something that felt like forever. You didn't save me, Ivo. You stood beside me while I saved myself. And I did the same for you. The city thinks I changed you. The city's wrong. I pulled back enough to look at him properly. We changed each other. That's what love does when you let it. Behind us, the clinic stood quiet. In the morning, it would fill with people who needed healing, who needed someone to see them as humans rather than problems. People like I'd been, like Ivo had been, like Sophia would have been if she'd lived. We couldn't save her, but we could save others in her name. That was enough. That was everything. Come on, Ivo said, guiding me toward the car. Mama made osso buco. She'll be furious if we're late. Your mother is always furious about something. True, but tonight she's furious with love. He opened my door. She wants to discuss the wedding she's planning that we haven't agreed to yet. I laughed, climbing in. We should probably tell her we're not engaged. We should. He slid in beside me. But she's having so much fun. It seems cruel. The car pulled away from the curb, heading uptown through snow-painted streets. I leaned against Ivo's shoulder, his arm coming around me automatically. Outside, Manhattan glittered. Harsh and beautiful. A city of second chances for people brave enough to take them. Inside the car, we were quiet. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we didn't need words. Love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks and drama. Sometimes it's just this: warmth on a cold night, someone's coat around your shoulders, the quiet certainty that you're exactly where you're meant to be. They say our love shook the city. They're wrong about that too. We didn't shake the city. We simply refused to let it break us. And in doing so, we built something it couldn't touch, something that belonged only to us. The car turned onto our street. Home waited, warm and bright, with Lucia probably already setting an extra place at the table because she somehow always knew when we'd arrive. I love you, I said quietly. Ivo's arm tightened. I know. That's it? That's your response? Would you prefer something more eloquent? He was smiling. I could hear it in his voice. Something about how you're my reason for breathing, my purpose for existing, the light in my— I kissed him to shut him up, and he laughed against my mouth. I love you too, he said when we broke apart. In case that wasn't clear. It was clear. Good. The car stopped. We went inside, together, leaving the cold behind. And somewhere in the city, in a clinic that bore my name, tomorrow would bring new patients, new challenges, new chances to heal and be healed. But tonight was just us. And that was more than enough.